welcome, and thanks for being here. We will cover essentially Facebook ads if this was your first time running a Facebook ad. Hopefully that you'll find this informational and helpful, whether you're a PM or a social media manager, or you just want to know more about social media, I don't know, paid ads for some odd reason. But yeah, so let me share my screen and we will jump right in. All right, can you guys see this? Cool. Sweet. So up top, this is essentially the process and the timeline of this meeting. It's also just the process that I would typically follow if I was given the assignment of creating a Facebook ad. So we'll start with creating an audience. We'll then move to creating the campaign. And then again, like Andrew said, we'll have time for questions. But first, let's jump into Facebook Business Suite. So for this, just for the sake of it, you can type in business.facebook.com. Land you in the Facebook Business Suite. Wow, cool. If you head down to settings, this is where we'll get into more features. We'll be able to pop open things like who controls what pages and where your business assets are. And then all tools, and we'll open Ads Manager. There's a few different ways to get to that, but for purposes of this video, that's the path we're taking today. I'm gonna, for the purposes of this video, use ArtSpeak's account. And we will switch over to the campaign view. This is typically the view that I'll always start in. So hopping back over to the document that I put together for the training purposes, or for today's training purposes, this is essentially a document of all of the information that I need to begin running a first ad. And this is pretty much all of the information that anyone would need to initiate a first ad. And so some of that information is, what is the goal? Meaning, what is the action you want a user to take when they see your ad? What is the budget of your campaign? What's the timeline of how long you would like to run that, specific dates, or you can do it by the length of days. And then audience, the audiences that you will be targeting. And then we'll get into the actual campaign creative, which is you'll need assets. So for the purpose of this meeting, I have, that's in the way, but I have 3 assets saved, or 4 assets saved. I have an apple, an orange, a grape, and an Easter egg selfie video. So those will be our creative assets today. And then as far as creative copy goes, we have our headlines, we have primary text, and then the button selection, there is a drop down, but I already know ahead of time that I'll be choosing learn more. The website URL, this is the destination of where my campaign will go. So because I'm asking users to click through, I'm asking for link clicks, I need a destination URL. So that will be this URL. The display link is essentially the same link, but the link that a user will see. This is the link that a user is guided to without seeing that link. I'll explain that further when we get into the campaign build. But this, again, is just all of the information that I typically need and that you would need in order to start your first ad. Just another heads up on this information. This lets me know when there's 3 headlines and 3 primary copies, and then that I have multiple assets. That lets me know right off the bat that we're going to be building out a dynamic creative campaign. And so we'll jump back into ads. We will click create. And then again, here's just to get started, you're choosing your campaign objectives. So you have awareness, traffic, engagement, leads, app promotion, and sales. If you're doing awareness, that's what we're trying to drive today, or sorry, awareness is more so just trying to get your content in front of people. You're trying to let people know more about your brand. You want people to just be aware that you're present. Maybe you're a new location, you want to share information like that. Maybe you just want to reach new people that haven't seen your brand or that don't know you established yourself in the community. So that's a great tactic. Traffic is what we'll use today. So this is great for link clicks, getting people to view a landing page, and then maybe even getting people to commit to an action on an internal meta tool. And then there's engagement. So this is more so for the purpose of trying to get users to watch your videos. Maybe you have something you want to share, like a campaign video or something that you're trying to share with your community. This is a great tactic for that. Leads is great if you're trying to generate, as we would call in sales, leads. And so you're trying to generate people to fill out forms. You can push people to fill out a form externally on your website, or internally you can build out forms on Meta in the business suite as well. And then the last two are app promotions and sales. If you are trying to get anyone to install a new app that you might have made or launched for your church or your nonprofit or your organization at all. And then the final is sales, if you're trying to drive anyone towards a sale. And so again, for today's purpose, we're going to go with traffic. And hold on, my buttons are in the way. There we go. Once you select the campaign objective, you have the option to name your campaign here. So I'm going to go ahead and do so. This is a test campaign. And so you can also add name. You have, let me take a step back. So you have 3 layers to a Facebook campaign. You have your campaign, your ad set, and then your ad. The campaign is where you get to essentially name your campaign and determine very top level elements to your campaign. Then you get down into your ad set. This is where you can determine the timeline, the budget, and the audience. And then you get down to the ad, and that's where you can really build out the creative to your ad. And so you can name each layer if you want. Sometimes a campaign might have 2 ad sets. It may have 3, 5, 10 ad sets. Or sometimes you have a campaign that has 2 ad sets that are running 2 different pieces of creative. And so you can build out different numbers of that once you build it out. But again, for today's intent, we'll leave it here. We'll click continue. And then we will be into setting up our first campaign. So your campaign is named. We are not a special ads category. We're not, you can determine that all here. And we are not running A/B testing. Though if you do want to run 2 pieces of creative, not through dynamic creative, you can do A/B testing and then allow Facebook or yourself to determine which campaign is performing better, and then you can allocate the rest of your budget to that. But at this time, we don't need to fill out anything else on this tab. So we'll click next, and now we're in the ad set view. So in the ad set view, again, we're going to be able to determine where we're sending people. Here, what we talked about earlier, dynamic creative. I know it's a dynamic creative campaign because we have multiple headlines, multiple primary copy, and we have multiple pieces of creative. So we will turn dynamic creative on. And then the only thing that that's really going to do is it changes the format when you get down to the creative, the ad set level. The next section will be your budget. So for the purposes of this campaign, we have a budget of $200. And so you have 2 options. You can determine by daily budget or lifetime budget. So for today's campaign, we'll choose lifetime budget. We will go with $200. And then the campaign date is set for tomorrow. I typically like to start my campaigns in the early morning. And then the campaign will run until February 10th. And I usually run them until 11:59 p.m. the night of that date, unless it's for a specific event or unless told otherwise. That's it for budget and timeline. Once you go down, you get into audience. So this is a section that I meant to cover in the beginning, but we'll cover it now. So there's 2 ways you can choose your audiences. So this is one. You can do one once you're in creative or once you're in your campaigns, or you can go back to, there's another tab over here. So I can close out of this for a moment. And you can click all tools and you can go to audiences. So typically I would do this before I get into building out my campaign, but you can do it during as well. So what we're going to do right now is I'm building out 2 audiences. I know that we're going to switch this one to a 365 audience. There we go. And then we have a lookalike with a 2% match. So really quick, we'll walk through those. You'll create a custom audience. We will base that off of our Facebook page. And we will choose, for the purposes today, ArtSpeak Creative, and we'll do anyone who has engaged with our page in the last 365 days. So what that is a 365 ArtSpeak audience. And then you have the option to add a description. This is great if you're working with multiple people in your ad account and people don't know it. Like if I created this ad or this audience and I needed someone else on our team to create or work with this audience, a description is great for them to know what this was, especially if my naming is just 365 AK. So what I might put here is 365 days of engagement on ArtSpeak Facebook page. That's a good reminder for myself and anyone else working there. And then we'll click create audience. And then this prompts me right away to be able to create a lookalike audience based off of the audience that I just created. So I'm going to go ahead and do that because we are going to target a lookalike. It's already pre-selected the audience that we just created. All right. Nice. There we go. And then I'm going to move this slider to 2% because, again, we determined in the beginning that it would be a 2% match. This just essentially is a slider for how close of a lookalike match the personality or the profile has to be on Facebook in order to be considered eligible for our audience to target. So we're doing a 2%. This isn't going to allow me United States. Typically, when you're setting up your audience, I wouldn't determine your audience location any further than United States or the specific country that you're trying to target within, because you have the chances of narrowing down your audience even further than you want to later on. And so I'll show you what that means, but we'll create this audience. And at this point, we have now created both audiences. So we're going to hop back over to our creative or our campaigns. So we'll go back to all tools and click ads manager. You're back in, and we will go back to campaign view, and we're back to where we were. Great. So hopping down to the audiences. Now we've built out 2 custom audiences. So we will select the 2 audiences. So we've got the lookalike that we just created, and then we can do what's called audience stacking here. So we can select multiple audiences. So we've now determined these are the 2 audiences that we are going to target. If you by chance wanted to exclude people, you could also exclude. So for this example, if I was sending out information about ArtSpeak and I didn't want to target the people who are currently following ArtSpeak's Facebook and Instagram pages, I can go back to my audience tab. I can create those audiences, and now I can exclude those audiences. So that's a great tool as well. This is a new tool from Facebook, Advantage Audience. And this is when Facebook feels like or knows that their algorithm can reach people beyond the audience that I've determined and believes that the content is relevant and that they will engage with the audience or with the content, then it allows them permission to place that content in front of that person. I typically allow it because I'm not the algorithm and not a robot, so I can't determine who is not or who is going to see the campaign. This is the section where I earlier said we would set our parameters to the United States, but if we really wanted to hone in on a specific location, maybe I want to target Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Maybe it doesn't exist. There we go. I can do that. And then I can also determine how large of a radius that audience is going to be targeted to. So if I wanted Philadelphia to be included in that, maybe I put a 50-mile radius. Nope, Philly's not close enough. But I can also location stack. And we can include both. You can also start to segment down your audience even further in here. Even though we have our audiences selected, we can start to segment it down further. So by location, by age, maybe I don't want people over 60 years old and I don't want people under 21 seeing our ads. I'm going to typically leave gender to all. And then here's where you can get into even more context and information if you want to hone down this audience. So if I hadn't selected 2 predetermined audiences, this is a great opportunity for broad targeting to find people based off of their demographics, their interest, or their behaviors. And so again, what that means is if I had not created these 2 audiences and I was just creating the audience for this ad based on this section below, I can then go down and I have options to target based on anything that's within demographics, interests, behaviors. The best way, honestly, to find some of those is to go to browse, and then you can go down through. So you have demographics, interests, and you can break it down by category, and then behaviors. And there's just, I mean, unlimited lists in here. So segmenting audiences can become fairly tricky, but it's also a great opportunity to mess around and see who you can engage with, or who your content resonates with the best. So that's it for audiences. Oh, language. If my ad is in English, I will always go to place it in English, because you don't know that your ad's not going to show up in front of someone whose primary language is Mandarin if you don't select United States English. So just make sure you're selecting the proper language, and then we can head down. So placements, you have 2 options. You have advantage placements, and then you have manual placements. Some of this stuff is getting a little bit more into the weeds of brand safety. If you have content that you don't want in front of certain audiences, or if you have an audience that is currently blocked, you can get into more information below. But the 2 primary options are advantage plus placements and then manual placements. If I were to select manual placements, which we will not be, you'll get a drop down and you will see all of the different options for what we can determine our creative can fit into. So you'll see that this is Facebook feed, Instagram feed, market, video feeds, right column, explore, explore home, Instagram shop. And I have the option to add any of these. But my creative will have to match those specific placements. And I will have to have creative. The downside to this is that if my creative size dimensions for the video or the photos that I'm sharing, if the sizes aren't the right sizes to fit into these locations on Facebook or Instagram, then it will automatically crop on its own, or it will determine the sizes for me and it will retrofit that video or image into those spaces, and your ad will not look clean. So I always recommend, especially if you're doing dynamic creative, to use an advantage plus placement, because what Facebook will do is it will place your ads with the appropriate dimensions and sizes in the appropriate places, including the appropriate places that it believes your audience will engage with that content. And that's it. So that's it for the ad set level. Again, just to recap, we have the ad set name. Dynamic creative is now turned on. Our budget and our timeline is set. Our 2 audiences are selected, and we're currently targeting within the United States. And then you will see notifications like this on your top right. Ad set audience size may result in 0 link clicks. That's a great warning. This warning is probably showing up because I just created new audiences. When you create a new audience, this is a great side note. When you create a new audience in Facebook, sometimes those audiences take up to 24 hours to fully upload. So with that being said, if you're creating new audiences, I would always recommend scheduling out your ad campaign at least 24 hours in advance before you are beginning that campaign launch. But yeah, that's it for this section, and we'll move down to the ad creative. So this will be your final section. So we'll name the ad creative if you haven't already done so. And then we will go down. We will ensure that we're utilizing the right accounts, especially if you're someone who runs multiple accounts or has multiple Facebook pages or Instagram accounts linked through your Facebook business account. So ours are predetermined and pre-selected. They are correct. So we'll move down. And this section is all determined already because we are utilizing dynamic creative. We are going to use single image or video format, and we are not going to use a carousel. A carousel is an option even with dynamic creative now. So that's a great update. So for today's intent, this is where we'll get to the bottom section of this document. So the headline, the primary text button, website URL, and display link. So first we will upload our images. So if we click upload, we have the option to select our 3 graphics, which for today's, oh no, there we go. I guess our orange failed, but we have the other 2, so we're good. We'll also go through and select the 2 that we want to utilize for this campaign. We'll click continue. And then we also want to select, because we're going to upload a video. I'm actually going to choose to upload a previous video. So this is going to take a second to upload. So actually, in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a piece of content that we've created in the past. And so this is a piece of content we've already had uploaded for ArtSpeak. We will hit continue. Now you'll see that I've added the 2 images and the video. So when I clicked and determined that this was going to be a dynamic creative ad earlier, this is where it gave me the option now to upload multiple pieces of content and multiple pieces of creative. A great selection or a great option to, I always recommend have turned on is optimize creative for each person. What this does is with dynamic creative, it may place the apple with headline 1 and primary text 1 to myself, and then it may select the grapes and headline 2 and primary body copy 1 to the next person, and so on. It'll just give different variations, and those variations are selected by Facebook's algorithm saying, we believe this piece of content will resonate best and engage well with this consumer in this format. And so as we've got these 3 in, we'll head down. We have primary text and headlines are the 2 that we'll be inputting today. And so just for the purposes of today, I will go through this quick. I usually have a document with the primary text in there. I can copy that. I can add an option, copy it, add an option, and you can add up to 5 options. So for today's purpose, we're only using 3. But you do have the option to add up to 5. And same thing with headlines. So we'll go headline 1, headline 2, and headline 3. So now again, as creative is displayed to different users, one user might see headline 2 with primary copy 3 with the grape. The next user might see headline 2 with primary copy 1 with the selfie video. A great thing just to note is you can preview your ads, and this is a great thing to do, especially because right now it's not going to show because I don't have a destination URL. But for, let's say for this video, we could click edit video. You have the option to internally on Facebook crop these graphics into recommended options from Facebook. You have the option to trim down the front or tail end of your video. You have the option to place an extra thumbnail for people who don't have automatic video turned on their Facebook. This is a great thing because they will see this thumbnail, and in some places, the automatic video will not play anyway, so they will see this thumbnail. And then the final is captions. So for this video, we already have captions baked into this video, but if we did not, we would go to captions and we would choose to generate automatically. You can also upload an SRT file, which will generate subtitles on the graphic as well. And I always recommend having subtitles either through Meta or baked into your video whenever utilizing a video on Facebook. Great. And then let's get down to website URL. So the URL destination we're sending people to is here. And then, so the difference between a website URL and a display link. So a website URL, you'll see on the ad on the right, the example, this button, learn more, that is where that website URL is directing people to. Whenever they click learn more, they will be sent to this URL. If they click on the graphic, if it's not a video, they will be sent to this URL. But there is a URL right above the headline, and that is our display link. So what people see on the ad, but not necessarily click through to. So it has to relate back to the website URL, meaning I can't put artspeakcreative.com/XYZ and then put google.com in my display link. They have to be similar URLs. They, can just utilize different tail ends to their URLs. The final step here is you have the option to show a call extension to your website. This is a great tool if you're doing something like lead generations or trying to drive people to a sales or a call. And then the final is your call to action. So again, this is where we saw in this document, my button will be learn more, and that is your call to action. So it's already predetermined that we're utilizing learn more because we're in a dynamic creative. But if we were not in dynamic and if we were not in a link click campaign, we would have all of these options as well. And so, yeah, there's many variations. And then the final section, and this is just a great note, this is a whole other section, but when setting up your account, your pixel will want to be created and connected to your ad account, and that will show here when you get down to tracking. And you will just want to ensure that when you're going to press publish before you launch your creative, that you see your pixel connected and you have no issues there. Once you've done all of that, you can click publish, and then your campaign will go live. That is how you launch your first ad campaign. And we just launched a fruit campaign through ArtSpeak today. Cool. So I am going to unshare. And then, does anyone have any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much for that information, Jackson. My question is about the audiences. So are we, and my apologies if you already shared this, are you able to apply the audience without initiating a campaign so that, like, for instance, if we wanted the campaign to run on Friday, but then we can build the audience on a Wednesday and then complete the remaining campaign on the Friday? Is that a possibility? Or if you have a new audience, you do need to complete the campaign within 24 hours of the start date. Does that make sense?
Are you saying, sorry for clarification, are you saying if we have the determined information that we need for building out an audience, can we build out that audience on Wednesday and then go ahead and build out the ad campaign on Friday?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can build out audiences whenever you want. You can sit around and build out as many audiences you'd like. You can actually, one thing that I would recommend is building out your typical audiences when you first start an account. So things like the 365 audience is a pretty common one. A lookalike audience at 1%, 2%, and 3% matches are pretty typical. And then even doing like people who currently follow your page so that you can exclude them when we got to that audience exclusion bar. And then I believe that's about it when you first get started. The rest will be, if you have maybe a target persona and you want to build out a custom audience, you can go ahead and do that as well. But that's typically like where you get started. And yes, you can build all of those out and have them predetermined and then build out your campaigns and utilize those audiences whenever.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Jackson,
what else?
What would be a good just like general first campaign for like a church to run?
Yeah. A general first campaign and all, I would say depends on the person, but I would lean towards either a brand awareness or a link click-through campaign. So, and the intent behind that is just more so evergreen or ongoing. So run maybe a small daily budget, run it for 2 or 3 months, and run maybe a selfie video from your pastor, just inviting people and letting people know that you're a part of the community and that you'd love for people to come in and visit you. And maybe if you're running it as dynamic creative, the other is like an information graphic that shows an image of the church or the people of the church and has some Sunday service times and the website URL included. I think that's a great evergreen or ongoing campaign to get started with, because you can just drive awareness for people who don't even know that you're in their community. And it's just a great way to put your face in front of a community in general.
I have 2 questions and then I'll stop asking questions.
Sure.
What types of budget do churches need to run ads? You just, like, I know you showed us a lifetime of 200 for the one in the example, and then just now you just
Yeah.
said a daily budget. What is, like, if for both those examples, like at what point is it like you're just wasting money because it's not even enough for the campaign to, pick up? And
Yeah.
then my other question, which that question's kind of a part of, is what are just the best practices like for Facebook ads right now? For example, I know like going broad in general is what most people do as far as audience goes.
Yeah.
That
Totally. So your first question is about budgeting, or budgets. So the 2 options are daily and lifetime budgets. So a lifetime budget is what we just went through. So lifetime budget. So let me take a step back. Setting up budget, timeline, and audience are very much like a soundboard. As you adjust one thing, another thing needs to be adjusted, and so on and so forth. So as you adjust one thing, another thing needs to be adjusted. That continues to happen. So with a lifetime budget, it tends to be great if you can determine how large of an audience or how large of an audience in the demographic in the area that you're going to target is. But I would say in general practice, a minimum lifetime spend might be like $50, like an absolute bare minimum. And that's like, hey, I'm going to run a campaign for 1 week. I'm going to target a fairly broad audience, because note this, as you get more segmented in an audience, that starts to cost more. So getting that content in front of specific people, if I uploaded a list of 50 people from my church and I just wanted to put my content in front of those 50 people, that's going to cost me a lot more. My budget's going to get spent a lot faster than if I just were to determine I want to set this ad out in St. Louis to anyone who's been in St. Louis in the last 2 months. Now, if you were going daily budget, I would say we have ads, and I've seen ads that span the spectrum of $5 a day all the way up to $2,000 a day. And so again, it becomes a soundboard, I like to call it, where when you mess with one area, another area has to be messed with, and they're kind of just like each one will affect the other. But for a daily spend, again, I would probably go with a bare minimum of $5 a day. And that can be determined of just how many people you're trying to target, and how many people, how large of an audience or how small or how segmented of an audience you're trying to target. All of those things will play into the factors of that budget. Hopefully that answers your question on budget. And then as far as general practices and best information right now, the biggest trend is that we are losing, access to privacy, or due to privacy laws and privacy regulations with platforms, we're losing more and more abilities to target people in specific ways each year. And so that trend is only continuing. So with that trend, comes how do you continue to play with tools like Meta or Instagram or TikTok or whoever, and how do you target those audiences and make it effective? And so one of the biggest trends right now is to have an ongoing campaign and then have either seasonal or specific campaigns that are based off of something. So maybe it's a product, or maybe it's a time of year, or maybe it's a season that we're going through, or maybe it's a world event happening. So you have that ongoing kind of brand awareness campaign, but you also have your little spikes of campaigns throughout the year as well that are based off of initiatives that you're trying to drive for your organization or company. And then the last part of that is, as we're losing more ability to target audiences, the most important element of Facebook ads right now is the creative. And so if your ads are not performing, you need to work on your creative. Because before, the rule was always, if your ads weren't working, you need to figure out what your audience is or who your audience is that you need to get that content in front of. Now we're utilizing an algorithm and a program that's so strong that it knows it's putting that content in front of the right people. So we need to make stronger content. We need to make stronger creative. And so really what you'll see brands doing more of in the upcoming season, especially this year, is you'll see a lot of brands narrowing in on, how do I come up with strong creative for my ads? How do I make it relatable to people, whether that's through user generated content, which you might hear as UGC, or if it's through storytelling or a brand narrative, rather than just like a typical ad of a shoe. Yeah, we'll see that kind of trend progress further and further. Hopefully that answers your question there.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions that are about the topic that Jackson was just talking about, and not specific to any certain like project or client or workflow, that you may be a part of?
Yeah, for the creative, what's kind of your suggestion of like how many graphics should they provide versus like a scroller type or a carousel type of
Yeah,
creative,
like a
and then
carousel
like a
post.
selfie link or a video? Yeah, what's kind of like your recommendation of the best practice for that?
I think the best practice is whatever creative is going to lend itself well to your current campaign or product or service. So if you're, let's say you're a smaller brand who's getting started with facial cleanser, a great piece of creative for you might be video content. And you might even want to focus on getting other users to do reviews and use that and show videos of themselves applying that skincare routine. And so that's where, like, what I had just mentioned, UGC, so user generated content, I might reach out to 10 different influencers or people who utilize my product and get videos of them and pay them for it, or whatever that looks like. And then I would use content like that. But if I'm maybe if I'm some like a fitness and nutrition coach, maybe I'm not as comfortable on camera, and I want to have I want to show what kind of information or value I can provide to my clients. That kind of might lead more towards like a carousel post. So you have like a carousel where you can scroll through various graphics in one ad, and so that carousel may show like 7 different reviews from my previous clients, or it might show 7 different features of fitness and nutrition types of coaching that I focus on as a nutrition and fitness coach. So I think it really just lends itself to whatever your campaign goals are, and what creative lends itself well to the goals that your campaign is trying to achieve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
For sure. Anyone else? Or any other questions?
If no one else has a question, I have one.
Go for it. This will be our last question, and then we're going to thank Jackson for his time.
Sounds good. Okay, the URL
Mhm.
So in your, just like with working with a lot of these paid ads, does the URL really make a difference on just how well an ad does? For instance, like a main page, would you apply that into like your link versus like a micro, like maybe like a page within a page within a page of a website? Does that make sense? So like a
I'm not
homepage, so say,
following, sorry.
okay, so say for instance, you're like on ArtSpeak's website, right?
Uh-huh.
And when you're creating a paid ad, you want to, and we're just going to apply the main page, the homepage, as like where people would go to,
Mhm.
versus somebody wants, like they want to create a paid ad, but the link that we are leading these people to is like under the career section or something. So it's like artspeak.com/careers
Mhm.
/project management or something like that versus artspeakcreative.com. Does that make
Mhm.
a difference at all with paid ads?
Are you talking about the URL that gets displayed on the ad itself, or
Mhm.
like where we're actually sending people?
Where you're sending people?
As far as where we're sending people, I think it's important because you want to send people to whatever next step you want them to take. So if we're sending people, if our goal through this campaign is to get people to check out our work, then maybe a brand awareness campaign is good. And maybe our goal when we send them there is to our work page. And so
Mm,
the intent is to drive a potential consumer or some other potential customer or whatever it is from our ad on that website to click through to our work page so they can see more of our work. Whereas maybe if we're trying to send people to like a form submission where we want to set up an initial consultation, well, maybe that's a lead generation. And we're trying to get them directly from that lead generation ad over to fill out a form submission to set up an initial 1 hour call with us. So we'll want to ensure that whatever URL we're sending them to is the URL for the next step that they're going to take from that ad. Does that make sense? You never
yeah.
really want to send someone from like, if we have like, if the intent of our ad is to generate a lead and a form submission, we don't necessarily want to just send them to our homepage because then they have to use more of their time and more of their energy to go and find more information about us and submit a form submission. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to make sure that if there is a link that was being applied and it had a bunch of forward slashes, that the robots in the meta world wasn't going to flag it. Deal.
No, you
This
should
is
be
not
fine.
okay,
The
cool.
only thing I wouldn't do is leave if you have like a URL that has a bunch of tail to it, or I don't know what that term is called, but a bunch of /XYZ/XYZs. You wouldn't want to have that as your display URL because if someone sees that, no one's going to be typing out artspeak.com/XYZ/XYZ/YXZ. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, thanks, Jackson, for sharing with us. We can all thank Jackson. Thank you so much. Hopefully that's helpful. If you're watching the replay and you want to ask Jackson a question, feel free to tag him, whether in Slack or on Mighty Network at Jackson Roberts, and or any of our strategists would love to chat with you. But thanks so much.
No problem. Have a good one.